You're here today hearing about the Action Mapping Project. I see so many familiar faces in the room. It's really exciting for me personally to be here today, and I'll tell you why. Because I've been doing this work for like 25 years. Where's Allie? Allie in the back of the room actually kind of introduced me to this type of work back in the 90s. And since then, I've been thinking about this kind of relentlessly. The work that I do now is nothing like what I was doing in the 90s, but what we are doing with the Action Mapping Project reflects kind of a lifetime of me thinking about how it is that we activate that tacit knowledge that we carry around in our heads in a way that makes our policies, our planning, our decision-making responsive to what we know as individuals, as communities, as youth. So where we are right now, and I'm not going to give you the whole history of the program, I just don't have time, but where we are right now is that as a project, 10 years ago, we had no money. We had no funding. I had a group of honestly, it was like 6, 7 really, really motivated college kids. They were students of mine from the GIS program. So not only were they college because they were GIS nerds, which means, and I'm sorry, are there any GIS nerds in the room? Am I the only one? Own it. There you go. Right. You know, it's not always the GIS nerds that you want facilitating sessions in classes. You don't want them out on your front lines, but everybody's got passion. And so for a long time, this project ran on passion of people who normally wouldn't be out there talking to middle schoolers and high schoolers and people in their neighborhoods, but we did. And so for a long time, we had no money and we did it. What we do is we go out and draw maps with people. What I want to know as a scholar, as an advocate, is how's your day? How's your life? What's your everyday life look like in your neighborhoods? What is that friction that you run into when you're trying to live your best life? Those are data that we don't have, but those are data that would be incredibly valuable if we had them in such a way that afforded us the ability to look really, really closely in at a neighborhood or at a particular intersection, at a park, and understand the experience of the youth that use that park and the people that spend their time around that park. Those data don't exist. We have equity index data. Those are good data. They're secondary data from the census and, well, all over the place, right? Lots of data indexed together. You end up looking at almost a map of poverty, but it's good data. It tells us about where we have marginalized, socioeconomically distressed places. The challenge that we have as a region, as just a society, is that within those areas that we know are distressed, how do we make decisions? I always like to go into offices and talk about throwing darts at maps, because that's what it feels like we do. We pull together as much secondary data as we can. We throw a map up of block groups and we say, this red one right here, we're going to do something. And then our engagement people go out and talk to the folks. What is it we need to do there? And you gather as much information as you can, and you contextualize the place, and you try to make the right decisions. And it's a lot of work. Is it a lot of work, engagement people? I'm looking at you, Daniel. It's a lot of work, right? Doing engagement. It's hard. So a lot of what we do is engagement with the Action Mapping Project. And we go out in the field and we're talking to people. The challenge with participatory work like that is you generate a lot of data that don't actually help you do anything. They're stories, they're anecdotes, right? They're exploratory, but you can't drive $1 million policy with what 12 people told you last week at the basketball court, right? You can drive policy with what 6,000 kids told you last year, right? And that's where we're at. So with AMP, what I've been doing for decades now is trying to understand, well, AMP's only been around since 2014, so 10 years. But for decades now, I've been thinking about how do we take lived experience, how do we take that stuff that makes us individuals and put that into some sort of system and then identify patterns. Because the thing about it is we share experience, we share perception. You live nearby to each other, you're gonna share the experience of the roads and the perception of the public spaces that your neighbors and friends that are from the same area share. That's something that we know as like folks like me, geographers. You know, near things are more like than far things. That's just geography. But how do we capture that data? We don't have a good way to capture nuanced data. So I've been experimenting with that. And so with AMP, what we do, and I'll show you what we do. I'm just gonna dive right into something and then hand it over. So with AMP, what we're doing is, cool, not that yet. Or that, or that, that. Okay, so with AMP, what we're doing is our engagement team, they used to go out with paper and pens into school classrooms And we would go with boxes of base maps, right? They were just a map of like the Lincoln catchment area, a map of the Stewart catchment area, a map of the Mason or the Silas catchment area, and crayons or pens. And they would ask the kids in the classroom, hey, why don't you just draw your lived experience? And we'd prompt them by saying, where do you spend time? Draw that with your blue pen. Where do you ride your bike? Draw that with your green pen. Draw lines on your map. And we would draw lines and outlines and points and stuff like that on maps, paper maps. It was cool. I loved it. I still love it. But you cannot scale that, right? I had visions of computer vision doing this sort of weird stuff with my paper, and it turns out I couldn't do it. I mean, maybe now we could sort of get there, but we pivoted at the pandemic and started developing software because we could not continue to be in classrooms drawing on paper once the pandemic hit. We had to go digital, and I resisted it for years. Like really, I don't know if any of you have ever been in a meeting with me when somebody says, "Hey, why don't you draw on computers?" And I usually lose my, I don't like the idea. I don't like the idea that we're mediating our lived experience with tech. But the thing is, we have to. You have to make some hard choices. What I'd like to see us use the data that we're generating to take this digital generation and make them slightly more analog. Like, let's get them outside. So it's just the whole idea that we're doing this through a computer challenges me. But it's fine. What it has done is we developed this platform now where we're ingesting data on the fly in classrooms, like drawing on maps still, so we try to make it feel realistic. And then those data are processed automatically really, in our Explorer. So there's a back end to this system that's generating data that are honestly making me insane because I can't comprehend the depth of nuance and granularity that we have in this data set that is so multidimensional. I don't blame the region for not using it because I'm grappling with it. But the thing is, later, I'm going to show you how we can start using it, and it's really exciting. So how we collect data, and this will transition nicely to hearing from our engagement team. This is our platform that we're using in classrooms. All the kids in TPS have a laptop, and if they don't, we have tablets. So we're in classes, and we're running like 20 kids per class. And we ask them, hey, everybody open up. The teachers usually shared the link, and choose your language, and click through to a survey. We're doing this work in Tacoma Public Schools and Franklin Pierce Schools. We have excellent participation in both school districts and can tell excellent stories and share amazing data about both districts. I'm going to apologize right now that Tacoma is so heavy in these particular maps. What I have to do in order to see Franklin Pierce patterns, I'll show you how this works, is really magnify Franklin Pierce, magnify Parkland and Spanaway, those parts that have unincorporated Pierce County. It's a little more challenging because I'm trying to be careful with those data. So we'll have another meeting like this in Parkland where we're sharing out those sorts of data too. What our software looks like, it's pretty standard survey software, but the magic happens later. So we're asking, your gender identity. How old are you? Race, ethnicity, right? So standard census level demographics. The upside of doing this is that we can disaggregate our data, kind of infinitely. So if you can imagine a segment of the population, we can probably map it. Languages you speak. This is really cool. I don't think the city of Tacoma is in the room. Are they? No, that's glaring. So this is interesting. For the city of Tacoma, we're working on language access. We know very clearly where people speak different languages in the city, and we can make really granular maps of what those language communities look like. So we ask about languages. Kids who maybe are from families that normally wouldn't respond to the census because of their immigration status, their refugee status, are responding to this. This is happening in classes. So we're generating data at a level of granularity about language that I didn't even think we were going to do, and this is a big part of what the city is excited about. If you're a student, where you go to school? This is interesting. Where's Elisa? She can take credit for this one. This question, I was resistant. How often do you get outside? A lot, a little, and a couple places in between. This question puts very starkly the challenges that we have getting kids outside. And I'll show you later, but the map of kids that almost never get outside is the inverse of the map of kids that get outside. And I'm talking geographically, not demographically too, but geographically. And that's data that we don't have currently. Well, we do now. What do you like to do when you're not in school? So these are again questions. If you all had heard of the State of Play, the Aspen Institute did some local work. So Metro Parks Tacoma is working with us, and these are some of the questions that they wanted to include in here. And it's really interesting actually to understand what kids are doing and what they want to do. Open-ended questions. We're asking a lot of open-ended questions in our survey, and we actually have some really slick ways of analyzing those data that are also spatial. So what have you tried recreationally? What do you want to try recreationally? So we're really getting a sense for what our kids' needs are. What do you love about where you live? Open-ended data, and then we get to the maps. So our maps, when you participate in our survey, kind of the heart of what you do is that you're going to start participating in the production of spatial data. All right, so the first thing we're asking is, hey, just draw an outline around your neighborhood. Now that's a challenging question. So the way I frame it is, you know when you're in your neighborhood, right, Mason? Yeah. Do you know when you're not in your neighborhood? Yeah. So we all know the answer to that question. The challenge is, where are those edges? I don't know. So I'm going to draw my neighborhood outline, sort of like there. There's my neighborhood outline. What's the name of my neighborhood? I'm going to call it North. Okay. What I've done right here, and what every single person who participates in this has done, is now told us, okay, this part of Tacoma is now characterized by who I am, right? Every dimension of my identity is now a part of that part of Tacoma. And that means that those identity characteristics that I share with all of you who are also from that part of Tacoma, who maybe overlap with me a little bit, we can understand even more better about who's from that part of Tacoma. And that includes your open-ended data, right? Those open-ended responses. What do you love about your neighborhood? What do you want to see changed about your neighborhood? We can code that data and then tie it to spatial information. Now, that sounds insane. It's really cool, and I'll show you later what it looks like. But we're asking other questions. Where do you spend time? So again, it's a pretty straightforward interface. Where do you spend time? What do you like to do when you're here? So we're not just collecting data about activity spaces and active transportation. We're also adding that context, that rich context. So not just where do you do this or that, but what are you doing when you're there? How are you feeling when you're there? So in a lot of ways, what I'm finding is our data are psychographic, attitudinal, right? We're understanding both where our youth are, where they are not, and how they're feeling while they're there. And that's really key, because we can't respond to Google data very well. Google's very good at telling you where you're at. Google's not very good at understanding how you're feeling or why you're there, or what you might want to do while you're there, or what you dreamed about doing when you got there, right? That's the sort of information I'm trying to tease out of here. And it's working. So what do you like to do when you're here? I bike and eat tacos. And I've got a typo in there, and that's okay. What we're trying to do is understand, that granular, that individual experience. You'll notice today I'm not scripted. I don't tend to script myself. I don't have a PowerPoint. I'm just going to go with the flow and feel who's in the audience. That's what we're asking our kids to do. We're not saying choose from this list of 16 sites the one you like best. I'm not going to program them. I'm going to ask them, from your memory, from your imagination, draw on this map, and then we'll make sense of it. So I'm taking the onus off of them to make sense of their experience and just asking them to share, draw, and then we'll make sense of it, because that's what we do. So you can draw lots, right? I spend time over here doing something else, right? Maybe I spend my time over here doing something else. So what I'm doing is creating an activity space for this particular kid. Doing the same thing, outlines around what I avoid. Okay, what do I avoid this area? Lots of traffic, maybe. Okay? Okay, lots of traffic. Now, we can go through and we're drawing points, we're drawing polygons, outlines, we're drawing lines. What roads? Or is there anything? So this is routes you tend to use. Okay, what routes are you using? What do you tend to do when you're walking that route? Where are you going? What are you up to? Okay, so we're collecting all these data. And I'm not going to go through this because I want to get to our engagers, but we're collecting both the positive and the negative, the inverse, right? So what routes are you using? What routes are you avoiding? I'm finding that kids tend to draw about 5 things per prompt. So if I've got 6,000 kids respond to this question, where are you riding your bike or walking around? That's 6,000. That's about 30,000 lines that have been drawn that tell us where our youth are. And those are 30,000 lines drawn by people with identities, right? 30,000 lines drawn by 11, 13-year-old Hispanic young people, right? 30,000 lines drawn by people from the North End, people from the South End, people from the East Side. So we can really capture that imagined area in a way that we could not before with these AMP data. Points, so we're dropping points. What's important to you here? And so on. What I want you to see is we're really getting a sense for the local imaginary. Where do you feel safe? Where do you feel unsafe? and so on. So we're clicking through, and if you could change something about your neighborhood, what would you change? This is our live AMP survey right now. Okay, so we're out there. We've worked with 1,000 kids this year since September. Last year, we worked with 7,500 kids in Tacoma Public Schools and Franklin Pierce Schools. We worked with, I think, 1,500 down in Franklin Pierce, and then another 6,000 in Tacoma. So we're working with a lot of youth. When we're in a classroom, we're working with about 20 kids. In that classroom, we generally see about 15 responses. So we're getting about 75% response rate because we're facilitating face-to-face, right? We have a curriculum we use in the classroom. We're getting good response, representative response. When we're, sorry, I totally blanked on, I'm thinking about our engagement team right now and what they're up to. So last year we ran about 400 workshops in schools, okay? That's 400 workshops across all those kids. In every workshop we run, the last piece that I want to share with you before I hand it over to the engagement team is that, and I've seen this when I'm in workshops, there's usually about 2 kids in each workshop that are just hyper enthused. They look at you and they say, how do you do this? Or why do you do this? Or how can I do this? Or this is the thing that I've always wanted to do. And I'm telling you, it's about 2 kids per class, okay? That's about 10% of the kids we talk to. Last year we talked to 7,500 kids. This year we'll talk to about 10,000 kids. 10% of 10,000, how many is that? Oh, middle school. How many is it? So high schooler, right? How many, what's 10% of?
No, I told her she would not have.
Oh, she's not on the spot. Well, it's 1,000. It's 1,000.
Don't ask me any questions about that.
Fine. So we talked to 10,000 kids. If 10% of those kids decide that they want to be an agent of change, they want to be a placemaker, that's 1,000 kids. That's 1,000 kids. So there's a side of this project that no one's heard from, and I want to turn it over to them. So can I turn it over to the engagement organizers? So they are the ones making the magic happen. I'll show you what the data look like in a little bit, but why don't you take it away? And I'll just leave this up here. So Dr. Natalie Jolly is she's the Associate Director of the program as of last year and is managing all of our organizing and engagement and facilitation. So what I think that you all have heard me talk many times about is our data. What I realized in going to one of our meetings a couple weeks ago is we have an amazing engagement and organizing team that I think the region should hear from. So here you go.
Absolutely, yes. I'm sure you all know that Matt will talk about the data until he is blue in the face. And you can come to 7Cs and test my theory that he will just talk until afterwards. We're going to head up there. But yeah, we do have an amazing component of the project, and that is our engagement team, our research fellows team. And so we have a group of UWT students and recent graduates who are on the ground talking to kids. Like Matt said, 10,000 kids last year. And we go in with a curriculum, a special made curriculum that we've come up with to talk with them, to talk with kids about the unique perspective that they have on their world, in their neighborhoods. And so we do a little bit of civic engagement, a little bit of kind of why your perspective matters and what could be possible if you shared it. We ask them the $1 million question. We always say, got to hit them hard with the $1 million question, and that is $1 million question.
If you had $1 million to invest in your community or in your neighborhood, how would you do it?
Exactly, and so we start them just thinking about what would you do if you could do it. It's a really amazing experience, and I want to turn it over to them to tell you about the work that they do. It's hard work. We bring candy in to help sweeten the deal, but not Smarties, because they will crush those and snort those. And so we bring lollies now, and that's been much better. But so I'd like to turn it over to my team here and introduce them to you, starting with Lisa D'Andrea. She is our senior lead research fellow. She started last year when she was a UWT student in psychology and since graduated and is now doing a master's in social work at PLU, and is what I call the unicorn of the project. Every program that has too much work and not enough people needs a unicorn like Lisa, who will both be able to walk into a classroom of 20 students and then walk out with 20 completed surveys, which, I mean, I can't even get my 5 kids to sit for dinner and listen to me, but somehow she gets them through every time. And, but also handles all of our HR, organizes our research fellows monthly meetings. I think we have improv lessons coming up next month. So just a lot of great work kind of building the team here. So thank you for all the work you do. Alexander Jeppes Blumensetter, did I do good? Nailed it. I recruited him from a sociology class earlier this year, and he was such a good sport. He came out and started going to classrooms, and about a month in, he came to me and said, Natalie, these students are amazing. We need a social media campaign and get their voices out there. And if you're an old person like me, that just strikes fear in your bones, right, to think of a social media campaign. But so when we go viral, you'll know that it was Alexander behind it all. But I think it speaks to kind of the passion and innovation that is coming, just kind of bubbling up when people start doing this work. So thank you, Alexander. Candy Yuan is actually a UW Seattle student who comes down here to be part of the project, doesn't own a car, takes an Uber down here, is so committed to this work, is going to be starting a doctoral program, fingers crossed, next year. And so just brings so much passion. An email from Candy in your inbox is like this. It goes, I had an idea that we should give teachers a checklist of things just to know before we get there. And so here is a mock-up of a checklist I've already made, and it might be helpful. And yeah, those of you in the room who are laughing know that is just the rare person. When you find that person, you just adore them. So thank you, Candy, for everything that you've done. And so I want to just pass the mic to them, and maybe we could hear a little bit from them about the work that they do and kind of what resonates with you about being an AMP research fellow.
Thank you, Natalie. That was very kind. Well, first, I want to say what an honor it has been working with the youth of Tacoma and Franklin Pierce County. I came into this not knowing what the role was. How am I going to go walk into a classroom? I'm a late learner, graduating college finally last year, and was wondering how I was going to do this. How was I going to be received by these students? And let me tell you, the youth of Tacoma and Franklin Pierce are amazing. And so much that I switched my degree for graduate school from psychology to social work. They are so willing to share their life experiences. They want to map, they want to tell everybody in our community what it's like to be a youth. And so for me, that was super moving. An aspect that really resonates with me is how capable they are, given the responsibility to represent. We talk about, we don't go to all the classrooms at the schools. We do about 20 classrooms of the whole school, and they take on that responsibility of knowing that they are representing not only their school, but the youth that they live in the community. And so for me, as an adult, it gives me so much hope. So when we look at the content and we look at the stories that they're giving us, I hope that everyone in this room, when they're looking at it, knows it comes from a very deep place from them. See, I start getting emotional on this. But I love being in the classroom, and it's so amazing when you're reading what they have to say. We'll move this along because we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So I could just ramble on. So here you go, Alexander.
I was going to let you just keep going. Absolutely. Hi, again, I'm Alexander. Working with this research project has been just such a great opportunity to talk with all these students. I got a random email from Natalie, and I was like, that sounds awesome. After I got out of the Army, I was like, what's a good way to impact my community? I moved here from Seattle, changing career fields, and seeing the passion that these students have going in that classroom and just having an opportunity to actually make an impact on the community in a way that they didn't have an opportunity to do before has just been something that's just been so great to see. Something that I've definitely seen with the students is just how much they care. They have never been asked these questions before, and if they have, they have been screaming it into the abyss, and there's nowhere that it's been able to go. So giving them that chance to finally make some sort of difference, or at least put it into the hands of people that can make that big difference, has been great to see.
Hi guys, I'm Candy. Yeah, I am a UW Seattle student, and I did take the Uber down, but I did take the bus back because my mom will actually you bankrupt me. But I think this project is just giving me a platform, really doing why I want to impact others. I am personally not from United States. I am an international student, and I think being able to just making kids to speak up about their environment is something I never experienced before. And I wish before when I was a child, I will be able to talk to people that really cares about my life, not I have to listen to people's decisions. But also I think just really fun to talk to kids, and when they say, oh, Miss Candy, I was like, damn, that's a great name to just call me a teacher. Right? So I just really love their energy about they actually care. And I think when you really started to elaborate on the topic of community engagement, about equity, about the things around you, they have a lot to say, and they will give you a lot of straightforward answers that you're like, oh, actually, yeah, let me put that in my notebook, because it's just they want you to know it because they don't have a platform before to speak up. So it's just having a public speaking platform for me to help them to know what is the definition of impacting others is really, really important. So I'm just grateful that I am helping Matt and Natalie on this project. And it will be sad for me to, leave this program if I get into other graduate schools. But I just wish this program always have people that care and just work together. So yeah.
When you do, not if.
I'm writing her letter of recommendation. She will get in. Yeah, I wonder if you all would tell us, so you all talk to a lot of kids. So what are you hearing from kids about being a kid in Tacoma? What would you say is the message that you think Tacoma youth want a room full of decision makers to know?
Besides the complete pride that they have living in our city, they want more access to safer routes, cycling, walking. We know that it's dark here in the Pacific Northwest. A lot of them walk to school in the dark, and they don't feel safe. Some of them tend not to even come to school sometimes because they don't feel safe. So how do we change that? How do we give them safer spaces to go to when they feel like they don't have one to go to? I think when they're sharing this information with us, they're trusting us that we're gonna take it and do something good with it. And so, once again, in those stories, you're gonna see, kids choosing not to go outside, choosing not to go to the park, because maybe it was a park that they used to go to, but now they no longer feel safe there. They're choosing not to ride a bike because they don't feel there's not enough bike lanes. Or they are taking different routes because the fastest route that they could get to where they need to go isn't safe for them, whether it's traffic, whether it's the lack of crosswalks. Little things like that, I think they want us to know that could make such a big difference in their life is adding that crosswalk, adding that blinking light, adding that bike lane. That could really just improve, not only physical but mental health and the anxiety that kids face in our city right now.
I 100% agree with that. I think safety is the main thing that a lot of these students really want. They want a place to be a kid. They want a place to run around and play. And I remember when I was a senior in high school, I didn't get an opportunity to do a lot of that. And so a lot of these younger students, they want a chance to still be able to do those things with their friends. We ask a question when we're talking in front of these students, what's some of the scariest parts of your neighborhoods? And hearing the things that they say, they're scared to go outside because there was a shooting a couple weeks ago, or we have a homeless problem near my house, and there's RVs starting to park right next to the park, and I'm afraid to go down to the park. Or there's all these fantastic trails that Metro Parks has made, but maybe it's a little darker, or maybe we could use more lights, and they want to utilize all these things, but they don't get an opportunity to be that kid that they really want to be.
I have a lot of students. I think they have such a good heart that they really care about the community. They're like, oh, I want to be able to running around with my friends, but also they're seeing like homelesses. There are people around their neighborhood that they don't have a good environment, and they just want to make sure that if there's a possibility that putting people together that go through some hardships. And I think just, I believe a lot of kids just always wants the best for others because they're so pure in their heart. Be like, I'm not afraid homeless. I just want their best for them. I'm scared. Like, I'm scared when I was in Seattle. I'm not joking. I am scared. But they are just like, I want to be able to have a police station that, taking care of people that in need. I want to have a shelter that the homeless being taken care of. I want to make sure if we have that $1 billion or I have that much resources that I can give to people who needs food. They want not to separate the world, they want the world to be together. And I know it's hard after COVID, that a lot of isolations, but I think it's just they want people to be united again, not like we're strangers, we're just strangers.
Thank you so much, team. And where are the rest of my fellows here? Logan is here. Can we get just a round of applause? Oh, yep, a new fellow here for this team. They are out in classes every Thursday and Friday, all day. We are out in classes. This week, I think we are at Mason and Baker. So we are just on the ground talking to kids, and it's a pretty amazing experience. And we'd hoped to have a few more kids here for you to talk to today, but we are joined by Ayla and Rindy Hartman. Rindy is a principal at Silas who makes my job easy. So every school is different in organizing and coordinating, and some schools, are really difficult, and others are really easy. And Silas is amazingly easy because of Rindy. And so, funny thing, we went maybe 2 weeks ago. We were at Silas, and I'm emailing Rindy and saying, "Thanks so much for hosting our workshops." And she says, "Funny thing is, my daughter was in one of your workshop classes, and she talked about the workshop all the way home." And I thought, well, we definitely need to know what was so interesting about the workshop that it was able to take up the chats with mom on the way home status, because that's pretty precious. If you drive with kids, what bubbles up there is important stuff. So I invited them to come, and I was hoping maybe, Rindy, you could say a few things about what you're seeing in terms of kids getting outside, or barriers, friction around kids being outside, biking, walking. I mean, one of the classes I was in Franklin Pierce, the teacher showed me, she has a whole drawer full of bags, and she says, I give these to kids when it's raining so they can put them over their shoes when they walk home, because there's no sidewalks, and so you have to just walk through so much water and slushy snow that it gets your shoes wet. So here's, this is my bag drawer, and I tell them, grab a couple bags on your way out, and everyone donates bags there. And so there's a lot of stories like that, and I think that's what you're hearing from the team too, that just make you really want to get out there and do something and address that. And so I'm going to pass this to Rindy, and we can hear from her.
Hello. I think, so first off, I just want to say I appreciate the acknowledgement of making it easy. Last year it was a little bit trickier. And as an administrator in a school, teachers definitely feel like they're stretched very thin, and they're trying to hit deadlines of, I think about like my AP Gov class, right? Perfect opportunity for these students, but we have these deadlines for the AP exam. And so it feels sometimes for teachers to give up a full class period feels like you're asking them for their right arm at times. However, this year, Natalie sent the email out, and then the teachers told me that they're all signed up. And so I think that speaks to just the efforts of the program, that when they are able to get into the classrooms and teachers see that it's organized, that they have folks that know what they're doing, and to see that students really are excited to share their story, then teachers want to have them back. So I want to make sure I kind of shared that piece too. And then as an administrator and a mom of a kiddo at my own school, I have 2 kids at the school. It is fun on those car ride home opportunities to just hear about the day. And having kids as an educator, as a parent, my husband and I both, they're very, I don't know if I should use the term critical, but they like to tell me a lot about how well people do or not how well they do. And so I just want to shout out here because she was just sharing about how great Alexander did and how engaging, and she goes, he just did such a good job, and he got them excited and motivated to share the story. So I last year had the opportunity to be in a classroom when they were doing the survey, so I knew a lot about what it looked like from the kid lens because I could see it on their screens. And so we talked a little bit about that, but it was kind of more about just that this was an opportunity that she felt really excited to be just asked the questions. I think valued as a young person in this city, that what she had to say mattered and facilitated in a really productive and positive way, I think makes a really big difference. So kudos to the team for approaching it in a way that gets kids inspired, because these are not educators, trained educators. I might try to talk to him a little later about what his career path might be. But, it takes a special person to have that niche to be able to go in and connect with kids in that way. And it takes some time behind the scenes to make sure those folks are prepared. Because if you have folks come into a school and present something to kids, and I'm just being real, and it's not engaging and it's not well planned and thought out, then it doesn't work well. And they have done an excellent job, and my teachers are excited to have them back, and kids are really excited to share. So I'm sorry you got off the question, but that's really what I wanted to say. So, yeah.
That just makes us so happy. Great. Oh, Ayla, did you want to just talk a little bit about what it was like to be a student and do the workshop with Alexander?
Yeah, of course. I feel like for me as a student, especially for the safety factor, I've always been told oh, you can't go there, not because I don't trust you, but because I don't trust the other people. So I feel like just having a program where it's adults that want to hear what students have to say instead of just the adults saying what they have to say, that's really important, especially from a student lens. And I feel like just having people like these people here who are not only just in the program, but into the engaging with students is super important. And it just really lights you up and makes you happy that there's people who actually care.
At 15, I could have never stood in front of a room full of people and talked about my experiences. It's so impressive to have you here. Thank you. And it is students like Ayla who light up my team, right? These are the students we keep hearing about, the ones that were so excited to participate and who feel like someone's listening, and that that kind of a switch is flipped for them. And now they're curious about, well, what is the difference between, me feeling unsafe at that park and then learning, oh, all my peers also feel unsafe at the park. And we have a mechanism to tell Metro Parks, hey, this place is a little sketchy, and then Metro Parks can do something about it. And so I think that it's really exciting to be part of that process. And so I have a ton of enthusiasm and innovation bubbling up from the research fellows because there's such passion and excitement about the possibility here. And so you make our job very easy, Ayla. But I think there's another group of students that we end up touching as well, and those are the more disaffected students that have some skepticism about municipalities. They don't think that anyone is listening, and they don't think anybody cares, and they certainly don't think that they have that anybody wants to know what they think about their community. And those are the students that I'm really excited to make interventions into and make inroads into that population, because I think that as we return back to students, Ayla did the mapping survey last year at Truman as well, and so kind of got to see that this is something that's happening, like this is out there, this is coming back, and increasingly what we'd like to do is, as we share this data with you all, that you all then share back with us, here's the changes we made, here's how youth data influenced the decisions we made, the investments we made in parks, in roads, in crosswalks, whatever it may be. And so those students, I think, have a real potential to reinvest in civic matters. Like those are the ones that may have written things off, but that may be able to say, hey, I actually have a voice in my community where we're making change. There's possibility here. And I think that's really valuable and exciting. When Matt first told me his idea to have kids draw on maps, I loved it, but I thought, won't they just all draw male genitalia on your maps there? Are they gonna take this seriously? And he said, trust me, they will. You have no idea the stories these kids want to tell. And he was really right. And it's been so transformative to get to be part of it, because what these kids are drawing is really kind of their biggest emotions, right? This is where they feel scared. This is where they feel happy. This is where they feel safe. And so I feel like it's a great privilege for us to have that level of investment, right? We asked them, and they took it seriously, and they put their heart on the page. And so I feel like with great responsibility, but with great privilege, right, of this data would come great responsibility on our part to actually do something with it, to activate it, and to make good on the promise that my team is making out there every day on our behalf, on your behalf, that if you tell us, we will get this into people's hands and they will activate it, they will do something with it. And so there is an element of trust here that I think it's a bit of a plea from our side, which is give us material that we can take back to them. Tell us what you're doing with the data so that we can share it with the kids, because I do treat this as a really precious resource that we have, that we are asking them to take a flyer on us, give it, let us try to do this. And they really did step up. And as Matt will show you now, the data are absolutely amazing. I am literally watching his hair grow gray as he works through all of these beautiful permutations of the data. And so thank you all for being here and for helping us try to get this off the ground. I think there's so much potential here, and as the engagement team, we really are having so much fun, and we're rooting for this. So Matt, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. I just want to make clear. First of all, thank you. There will be time for questions with the team at the end here, but because we got slightly late start, I want to get through, show you what we're up to, and then we'll have questions for everybody all at once. And so I might ask you all even to come up. All right, so thank you very much. And that's cool. That's actually the first time that we've ever had our engagement team come and talk to anyone. So that's really exciting for me. All right, so really, this is me. I don't enjoy scripting myself. I don't enjoy scripting the data. I don't enjoy scripting the kids. I think that we can do so much when we just respond to each other. And what I did today was, I was asking who's in the room. I think it's really important that when I'm talking to a group of people who took their time to come and hear from us, that I talk to you and I don't just deliver you the thing that I cooked up this morning. So I'm kind of thinking and responding to you and your energy right now, and to the energy from our team. What is it that they said, and where are we going with this today? I think what's really powerful that just came out right here, Ayla just said, Ayla, right? Oh, she just left. She said that it's really cool to participate in a process like this, right? That it's not a bunch of you all sitting there and telling us what you're planning to do for us without really ever asking us anything or listening to us. Maybe you did ask us, but you went ahead and did the thing you were going to do anyway. That's their experience. I mean, that's my kid's experience. That's every kid's experience. We're trying to do a little differently here. like everything. And by doing it differently, I mean, we're making decisions with kids, right? We're going out and asking them the questions that we need to ask. The challenge that we have is that we don't know what we don't know, and so we don't know the questions to ask. So I showed you the survey earlier, our mapping tool, our ingestion tool, right? You draw on that in really open-ended ways. We have our normal categories, the race, ethnicity, gender identity, age, but we also have all of these open-ended categories. And we have this open-ended category called maps, right? You're not choosing from a drop-down. You're not putting a point on the map. You're really drawing your experience into that engine. And what that means is what comes out the other side looks very different than what we're used to when we work with data. And I increasingly am recognizing that. The team is out doing the work they do. The data come back in. We analyze. It used to be that it would take me days, literally days, to go through just one set of our data. We can now make maps in just a matter of seconds. It's incredible. So what I want to show you now, before I get into the data that's making me crazy, is kind of our top level. Here's our report. I sent out the report. You may have seen it already. It's the first of several that are coming out. This one was designed around the city of Tacoma and city council districts. It was very much an experiment to see if we could do this. It worked. Reports are coming out around Parkland and Spanaway. Specifically, we were down in Franklin Pierce, and their patterns, their contours, they're invisible if you look at them alongside directly City of Tacoma patterns because there's so many more people. So I'm teasing those out. Those reports are coming out, Franklin Pierce. We have a park-specific report coming out. You'll hear about these releases if you sign up for the mailing list, wherever that is. You all are obviously on a mailing list of sorts. You're here. So that's coming. So let me show you what the report looks like, and then I want to get into the data because it's so cool. All right. There we go. So remember, we're collecting open-ended data, and that data includes drawing on maps. I didn't say this earlier, but by the end of a survey, by the end of a session, what you see on a kid's screen, on a participant's screen, whether it's a resident, adult resident, or a youth in a classroom, what you see is really art, right? They are sharing their imagination, their experience, their perception, and it's visible because we are layering those data. So you can start seeing those patterns resolve in real time just in the kid's own experience. Those data then, we do need to make meaning out of, and that's what we've been doing. So where is our report? I think this is it. Great. So our first report came out a few weeks ago. Just as a reminder, we worked in 26 schools last year, 400 workshops, more or less, and responses from 6,000 kids, but we worked with closer to 7,500. So that's a lot of youth. Those are kids from Tacoma, Parkland, Spanaway, so all of Tacoma Public Schools and Franklin Pierce Schools. Lots of data. In the report, if you, it's online and there's QR codes all over the room. You can find this. But in the report, there's some material that you might be interested in. But then, and I'm not going to read through it. I do want to get into the data. Our demographic breakdown is pretty consistent with what you'd expect in the region. Some of the differences have to do with, well, honestly, some sociology in our gender categories. And then also in categories like race and language, we are functioning different than the census. I said this earlier, but youth are going to be more responsive to an instrument like this because they're in classes, they're where it feels safe, and they're sharing non-identifying information, not with the government. So our data are going to look a little different than the census, and that's good because they're representative of the, if we're working with, so we talk to about 30% of middle schoolers and high schoolers, and we're pulling results from about 25%. So we have responses from about 25% of middle schoolers and high schoolers in the region. So our data are statistically significant, and they look slightly different. They're new patterns, different patterns, when that's exciting. Throughout the report, you'll also find lots of quotes. The quotes in the reports are pulled from our open-ended data from those survey responses. And I'll show you what those look like. Just some of the other data are age breakdowns and languages. Some summary data from the open-ended questions, what kids would like to see changed about their neighborhoods, what they love about their neighborhoods. In this particular report, these are all top-level numbers. This is total universe. I'm not doing any comparative analysis in this report. But I will talk to you about comparative analysis. How often do you get outside? What's interesting about this question, I said this earlier, is that this looks, well, I don't know if this looks reasonable or not. What we've done is develop a baseline, okay? So we know now for a region, here's kind of our kids. 20% are almost never getting outside. And you, as a room, I think looking around, you all know who that 20% is, right? So those are the kids that we need to talk to. Those are the kids we need to be engaging with. Those are not the kids that are going to come to a meeting at UW Tacoma. Okay, so that's the challenge, and that's kind of something that we're doing. The daily kids, again, you know where those kids are. You know who those kids are, and I'll show you what they look like. Well, not what they look like, but their demographics in a few minutes. There's a couple of maps in the summary report, and I think there's a few copies of the summary report left over there. The maps are examples of how we are starting to pull opportunities from these data. So the goal here isn't just that we produce pretty maps. I've been doing that for years, and though everybody very graciously always tells me, wow, beautiful maps, Matt, I haven't been very good at getting those into decision-making systems. That I hope changes today. I really hope it changes today. But this is what my data look like, right? This is AMP data, right? It's this stuff. And the patterns that we're looking here, these are routes. What is this? Are these route improvements, I think? Hang on. Yeah. So this is walkability from 7,500 kids down to 6,000 who responded. This is where, if we were going to invest in active transportation, I would say you're going to invest, if you want to be smart, in some of those bright white areas. That's where you get the best bang for your buck. Okay, you want to put a crosswalk down, put it in one of those bright white areas, right? You want to improve sidewalks or maybe add sidewalks, trim some trees, deal with bad parking. Bright white areas. That's what we need to be doing. And I've been saying this for years. What I realized, though, is where are those bright white areas, Matt? Where's the shape file? Where's the Excel table? Okay, fair enough. I truly have spent 10 years trying to figure out how to generate these data. And now we have them, and they're great. So you can check out the maps in our report. This is a map of, I think, where we could improve. This is where kids in the region are spending time and feeling safe. So it's a static map. It's in the report. The patterns on here are not surprising. What's number one here? It's the mall, right? It's the mall, and that's mind-blowing. Is anybody's mind blown? I mean, no, it's not, but it kind of is. Like, you don't want the mall to be the place where our kids feel safe, right? But honestly, the mall is where our kids feel safe, and they feel safe there because there's other people around, like security, and it's kind of clean, and there's lights, and there's other people around. It's safe. So, I mean, I don't feel particularly great at the mall, but that's bright white. So, this is what our kids are telling us. Now, these data are awesome, and I'm super proud of them. The team has done a great job generating them, but they're really only part of the story, these static maps. The real beauty of this project is in what the data look on the back end. So I'm gonna kind of describe to you what these data are, and then we'll dive in and see. Okay, so remember, on that survey, I'm a participant. I'm sharing with you my identity, right? I'm male, I'm between 40 and 50 years old. I live here-ish, right? I speak this language. I get outside pretty often. Here's all the things about me. Here's what I love about my neighborhood. Here's what I'd change about my neighborhood if I could, and all this stuff, right? Lots of open-ended stuff, lots of closed, single choice, multiple choice, whatever. But I've now captured the essence of who I am through this, and I've geolocated it along with my activity patterns. That's a tremendous amount of data. I also captured that at a particular moment in time. So what we have here, I'm resisting the whiteboard. I'm going to resist it. I don't have time. I love whiteboards. I could draw on that thing all night, but I really don't have time, so I'm not going to. So what we have, though, is we don't just have data about the geography of people. We don't just have data about who the people are, what the people like, and by people I mean youth. We're working with, just to be clear, like 11-year-olds to 18-year-olds, middle schoolers and high schoolers, and the reason for that is that's when you really start having that spatial cognition. You understand the world around you. So we work with these kids, and I just lost my train of thought. Where was I? Yeah. Right. So we're not just mapping where people are. We're not just mapping who people are telling stories about what they are, but we're also mapping time, right? So I can tell you because we've now been collecting data for long enough, I can tell you how kids were experiencing the Eastside Community Center, how they were experiencing that neighborhood before we built the Eastside Community Center. And I'll tell you it was different. But I'll tell you another thing. The way kids were experiencing the Eastside Community Center, that neighborhood south of First Creek Middle School, next to the donut shop where they all like to hang out, it was not good. And then we built the community center. It was still not good. This year, I'm starting to see things change in the data. That's freaking cool. Like, this is hyper-local, right? This is super granular. Seeing change across time, seeing the impact of those millions of dollars on actual lives. So that's the sort of thing that we can do now. We can identify, right, those patterns in space. We can drill down to a particular location. We can understand who is there and how they're feeling, and then we can track across time how those attitudinal or psychographic data change. So we can actually now measure change across time, the effect, the impact of our investments in our neighborhoods. And if we can do that, then we can make really, really smart decisions about how to respond to youth voice. That's what's possible. So how is that possible? Here's how I'm gonna make it possible. First, I'm gonna show you the data. The data are super cool. Okay, so I gotta refresh this. So, I told you that, and you're the second room that's ever seen this. It's gonna break several times, but it's super cool. So what we had to do during the pandemic was build some digital tools. I couldn't scale, we couldn't scale, and by scale I mean talk to every kid in Tacoma and every kid in Franklin Pierce. We couldn't do it without software, unfortunately. So we built the front end. And then the thing was, it takes me a lot of time to analyze those data once we have them. And it's really hard and really complex, and honestly, it's making me old. So, well, that in the years. So we built a back end on this system too. And the back end, I'm sorry, I know it's 2 hours. Stand up and walk around if you need to. On the back end of the system, we're now taking all of those thousands, and when I say thousands, I mean thousands. If we have 30,000 lines for one question, we're asking 10 different questions. We have like close to 500,000 objects drawn in our system. We can now model those objects in our system like that. Like I can pull off a map, and I'll show you how in no time. That's really cool. So we've built a back end of the system that nobody's really seen, that I'm just starting to share with key partners. And so you can see what's possible, and then we can figure out how do we move forward? How do we activate these data? So I've got, oh my God, I'm running out of time. Okay, so a system here. What we're looking at is a data explorer. On the left-hand side, I've got all of our questions, right? Where do you feel unsafe? Where's your neighborhood? Where do you spend time? What do you avoid? These are all the questions that we've asked. Now, if you're an engagement person, you could be asking similar questions, right? We could be using the same sorts of tools to ask kids, maybe at a park, where did you hang out at the park today? And draw an outline around that. The questions that we ask are not baked in, but the methods that we use to generate data are, and that's kind of cool because it opens up a lot of possibility. Right, so you saw the questions earlier, then we have our demographic data, all right, and that's how old are you? Your race, languages you speak, schools, right? All those things that we ask. And then there's things called areas of interest. Maybe we want to drill into a particular place. But what does that mean? So what we're doing in here is drawing maps. So it could be that I'm curious about, let's not go negative. Where do I feel safe? So where do I feel safe as a young person? So 11 to 13, under 11. Let's go up to 15. So where do young people feel safe in Tacoma? I'm just going to whip off a map here. Now, I did cheat and make a few maps because I want to show you some things. But as this map is drawing, so we're in my safe category. We're drawing maps now. I think it's of where young kids in the regions feel safe. So I'll tell you that being in this system feels like being in my brain. What we have here is this multi-dimensional data set that we can look at from really any angle. You want to think about young children who identify as non-binary, who speak Spanish and are from the Southeast Tacoma. I can tell you where they spend time, right? I can tell you where they feel safe and where they don't feel safe, and I can tell you why, right? Because that's the sort of data that kids are sharing with us, hoping that we'll activate as a region. So that's a big data set that's coming on. Oh, there it is. Okay, so we've got 11 to 13-year-olds. Where do we feel safe? Now, this is the total universe of 11 to 13-year-olds. So currently we have 7,006 responses. Okay, so that's last year and this year combined. There's 4,757, so quite a large segment of our population is between 11 and 15, or 15 and younger. So this is where 15 and younger, let me turn on. So look like, there they are. Okay, so 15-year-olds, younger than 15-year-olds, where are they hanging out? So it's a pattern it's familiar to me. It's probably cool to you. It's not the most exciting pattern, but it does tell us a lot. If you know Tacoma, you recognize this pattern. What's the big red dot up there? There's Proctor, right? There's Proctor. What's this? This is the mall, right? So big patterns like this, they tell us, they validate what we probably already knew about kids, but that's cool. Where does the general population feel safe? Pretty much the same as 11, 15-year-olds. Okay, so these are maps that I pulled off earlier just so that we could look at them. You can see that kids that are a little bit older are also pulling us up into Ruston. Okay, now for our Franklin Pierce friends, the reason your data are not visible on here is that there are so many kids in this sample from Tacoma. What we could do, I'm not going to right now, but we can whip off a map that's just Franklin Pierce population. Let me, and we'll get into that. So, but what about, girls? Girls, you can see the gravity shifts a little bit, right? So we have unique patterns for unique populations. Girls are moving a little bit farther north, but still at the mall, and then there's some stuff opening up in Fircrest. So where are we feeling safe? That's cool. Where are we hanging out as a region? So where are we spending time? We want to know where the kids say they're spending time. This is the total universe, I think, of, oh no, I'm still filtered. Oh, this is the total universe that answered this question, right? So we've got 4,000 kids telling us where this is. Now we might want to know, what are they doing? How are they feeling? So this question here asks, what are you doing when you're hanging out? So I'll just play with this. So what are some key themes? What are the kids doing as they're spending time? We're summarizing now all them comments, and there's just, so we're probably looking at, with 4,700 responses, probably looking at about 4,000 comments. So what we're able to do now is filter through those comments and provide rich context for these locations. That's all great. How do we deal with these data in practice? I'm going to walk through an example. Let's say that we are doing active transportation planning, and we're interested in driving routes or non-driving routes. Here's where kids in the region, here's where they're walking around town, riding their bikes around town, riding their scooters around town. The dark red areas are where they're spending more time doing active transportation. That's great. Maybe we've got some money to spend around Wright Park. Okay, you may have seen me do this map before, but it's interesting. Let's look at Wright Park, and then maybe we're interested not only where kids are riding their bikes, but where do they feel unsafe when they're riding their bikes? It's a totally different pattern. So now we're looking at a universe of kids in Tacoma who ride their bikes around town and feel unsafe on those networks. Okay, so that's the inverse. Where do you do active transportation? Now, what are you avoiding? This is not surprising, WashDOT people, is it? I mean, that's State Route 7. It's an absolute travesty that it runs past multiple schools and that we can't do anything about it. I mean, we can, but it's money and will, right? So what we have here, though, is will. I mean, this should motivate. We're talking about 4,700 kids who tell us that this is where they feel unsafe walking. And we might say, okay, great. We've got $1 million per neighborhood. Let's spend $1 million just making Wright Park safe. It's such a jewel. Let's go look at the Wright Park. Let's see what's going on around there. What's interesting around Wright Park is that we have a pattern with this data, with our universe of data, that's kind of invisible. You can sort of see, we're looking at routes the kids avoid. You can sort of see a pattern there, but there's not much. Trust me, the pattern's there. And what's cool about these data is that we have so much data we can magnify really anywhere and see other things. So do I want to see around Wright Park how kids are experiencing active transportation? This is now zoomed in, magnified, same data, but I've magnified and adjusted the contours so that we're now looking at patterns. Let's do a comparison. This is how kids are moving around Wright Park. That's division on top. I'm choosing an example that I understand is Tacoma specific, but I'm trying to choose a broadly applicable example. So we have the north side of the park, which is right here, which is where people are walking. This is always a problem. There's an entrance along the south side of the park that we can see in the data. You can all analyze these as well as I can. This is how kids are moving around the park. This has changed pretty dramatically since the link I've just seen in the last year, that pattern shift. So here's how they're moving around the park. We can see that this seems to be an issue. All right, so if we look at what are the obstacles, what are you avoiding, kids? This. Has anybody been here? Yeah? I got hit on my motorcycle right here, right? This is rough. I mean, it's dark. There's a lot of people running back and forth across the street. When it rains, you really can't see what's going on so this is showing up. Now, what I like to do to ground truth my data is ground truth my data, right? So I trust these because I know this place, right? I'm from Tacoma like the rest of you. We can walk around and see these patterns. The kids are telling us things that we know, and if you get out there and see, then you would know too. So we would, if we were investing in Wright Park, I would look at these data and say, okay, well, why are kids avoiding this over here? I think, let me ask my, why are kids avoiding? I'm not gonna write a very good question, we'll see what happens. So, of course, we built in a large language model that we're training to understand this sort of stuff, and it's real rough. But we're taking whatever the comments are, however many there are here. Anyway, I'll tell you that it's not good, right? And I'll tell you that as much as we as a region are being empathetic to everyone, our kids are really struggling because we are really focusing a lot of resources on helping people that are in need and forgetting that our kids are trying to experience our streets and our parks and are feeling unsafe. It comes up a lot in the data, how unsafe our kids feel. So it's there, right? That's really, really rich context. And it's really cool. So I can walk you through and I can tell you, if we have some money and we want to spend it around Wright Park, right there, deal with some of the issues that the kids are pointing out to us here. There's really great patterns that we could talk about for the next 14 hours. In our Explorer, we can dig into rich questions about what I would change about my neighborhood given the people that, hang on. See, I've got to refresh. So this is beta, very beta, and it's gonna break. And when it does break, you refresh and you get back into it. So we've got all of our open data. If you could change one thing, what am I gonna change about my neighborhood? Now, I'm only showing you this because I want you to understand the way I understand that these data are so multidimensional that activating them will be a challenge. So we've got a couple of, I got a bug. I'm not gonna worry about it. Yeah, it does work. The data are almost impossible to work with until you understand them. So I want to show you two ways that I'm pulling meaning out of these data. And then what I'd like to do is dig into the second of those two ways. So one of the ways that I'm taking all these really rich data and sharing back with you as a region is through field notes. We've struggled for a long time to tell the stories that the kids are telling us. So you'll find out on the tables here a set of, I think there's 4 field notes. They're our first 4. They're focused this time on activity. So what are our kids doing in the region? What are their obstacles to doing those things in the region that they want to do? Now, this is in large part because the Metro Parks asked us to dig into these data. Pierce Parks needs to dig into these data. We need to understand what our kids are doing so we can plan for them. So we have things like what sort of structured activities are kids participating? What sort of unstructured activities are kids participating in? Those data, interestingly, are drawn from open-ended responses. So we're summarizing in a big way open-ended responses and then tying those summaries to spatial data, which is incredible because it means that we can contextualize down to, say, a park, how kids are feeling at that park, what they're doing around that park, where they're running into friction, being able to get to that park, all this stuff. So field notes, you'll find in the back of the room a OneNote that is all of our kids and what they like to do in their free time. So are they playing soccer? Are they climbing trees? How often are they getting into that? And then some stories that I've been working on with actually Dr. Jolly over here, who's been great to come onto the project. I don't have time to make a lot of the meaning. So you'll notice a new voice in a lot of the material that we're producing, and that's our resident sociologist coming in and actually making meaning out of the work that we're doing. And that's important because we're sharing back with you, here are some of the insights that we're hearing in a way that's not a table of numbers, it's not a file of map data, it's stories. And if you find any stories in here that you're like, wow, I really want to dig into that, we have ways to dig into it. I mean, there is so much here that we can dig into. So you have what kids are up to overall, and then you have activities that kids want to try. This one I'm really interested in because as a region, we're trying to think about how we get our kids outdoors, and a big part of that is providing them opportunities to do things they want to do. Well, if we don't know what they want to do, then we can't provide those opportunities. So a lot of that's here. What do we want to try in the structured, right? And that's normal stuff, baseball, football, that sort of thing. But there's some great ideas for unstructured activities that have come up because, again, we're not asking kids to choose from a list of programs or activities that we've come up with. We're asking them just to share us in an open-ended way what they would love to do, and then teasing meaning out of that. So we've got the full universe, what kids are doing, what they'd like to do. The more interesting stuff comes if you look at the getting outside, the gender, and the race. So there's 3 field notes that provide a comparative analysis of different segments of our youth. The first field note, getting outside. In this field note, I'm comparing data between kids that get out a lot and kids that don't get out much, and what they say they do and what they say they'd like to do. And then you'll see some of the text here really pulls out of that the meaning that we're seeing in the data. This is stuff, if you're programming, we could pull these data for really anywhere. You want to know around a community center, these same information, it's very doable. But we just need to work together to figure out what it is that you're going to find value in. So getting outside, we dig a little deeper. What are some of the friction points that are preventing kids from getting outside? If we know 20% of our kids don't get outside, and we know that in South Tacoma, that's more like 60% of our kids say they don't get outside, what do we do? What do we do? Because that's not okay, right? That's a travesty. So what do we do about that? And there's some ideas in here. Race and ethnicity, there's some real clear issues that we need to deal with. They're class issues that present themselves through race and ethnicity, but they're not surprising, honestly. It's just sad to see we're still dealing with it. So I dig into this stuff if you're thinking about active transportation, activities, getting kids out, increasing the sizes of the activity spaces. This is where you'll find those ideas in our field notes. And then finally, the gender patterns. What's really interesting about gender patterns is that we now have 3 gender patterns to pay attention to. In fact, I want to jump over to the Explorer and make a point with gender. Sorry. Oh, this is probably going to break. Oh, it didn't. Right on. Okay. Where's feel safe? Safe. Okay. Here's where we feel safe. Kids, as a region, feel safe. Pretty much North Tacoma and the mall. And then this is the influence of kids that live in South and East Side and Northeast. You're starting to see their data show up. Girls, where do you feel safe? A little more compressed, up in North Tacoma. Boys, where are you feeling safe? Boys, they feel safe everywhere. It's a little bit bigger, their patterns, right? They're expressing their masculinity. How about non-binary students? Okay, right, that's the point. And that's the point. We all experience life differently, and we are parts of segments. The challenge is that we don't know these emergent segments. Non-binary, we know, right? That's come out. What other identity categories are there? There are kids, perhaps, who don't get out much, who really like video games, but love to climb trees. I'm not saying there is, but there might be. Those data are in here. And once we identify, once we know, we're looking for this segment and we want to understand their experience so we can plan around them, that's effective planning, right? That's responsiveness. Okay, so running out of time here, I just want to show one more thing. So our field notes, those are available on tables, and then you can also grab those online, and there's links all over the place for where you can get these things. Last bit I want to share with you is that, so I said we're trying to activate our data 2 ways. One is through field notes. The other is through what we're calling, oh, and I just realized I don't have this up. Hold on. Well, it's easy data. And let me blank screen this for 1 second and pull up a document that I just realized I didn't pull up. So what I've done, knowing that our data are incredibly confusing to look at, is take our data and transform them in such a way, forget it, I'm not gonna pull this up, I'm just gonna talk. Hold on. 1 more second. Okay, so we've transformed our data in such a way that they are now in formats that you know, love, and understand. In fact, though, before we get into the formats you know, love, and understand, here's how we work. Okay. So this is a familiar map for GIS people in the room. And I'm sorry if you're not a data person, but this is exciting to me. These are block groups, census block groups. These are planning data. Beneath those block groups, I can add roads. All right, so here's, I think these are roads. Yep, there's some roads. Okay, so those are roads. And how about, for the heck of it, we throw parks. Now let's say that we have some lovely foundation that said, we'll give you $5 million to invest in a park, okay? But it's got to be a park that is going to, you're going to deal with walkability around the park. You're going to improve accessibility to a park in a marginalized part of Tacoma. And we got $5 million. We really want to affect kids with this cash. Where are you going to do it? Where are you going to do it? So we could, and probably what we would do, we'd say, well, let's pop them council districts on and make sure we make the right political decision about which council district we're going to invest in. But really, it comes down to, right, our equity index. Okay, so we've got lots of data up there right now. I've got an equity index. I've got all the parks in town. I've got the roads because we're thinking about walkability. I've got council districts because it's political, and I've got block groups because, well, that's where the equity index lives. Well, then somebody might say, wait, do I have this on here? Somebody might say, hey, there's that guy, Matt. He's got that data. And then you look at this and you're like, no. You know, it's beautiful. I mean, I see a lot of beauty here. That is our youth imaginary, right? And I respect that. But the thing about it is it's really hard to activate. So that's no good. Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that. And let's go ahead and leave that. But let's say we just want to choose a park based on what I'm calling AMP easy data. All right, so what I've done now, I'm going to get rid of everything except parks. Here's our parks before, all of our parks in Tacoma. Now I'm going to use the board because I couldn't, I've got a pen. Okay, I've got a pen. So what I've got are easy data because my data were hard and now they're easy. So they're equity aligned, they're spatial, and they're youth data. And they're, I hope to God they're easy because this has just been a thing. So we've got our parks here. Now let's say that, all right, I've applied my easy filter, and I'll show you what that looks like. But what we're looking at here is a map that represents, I'm going to zoom out a little bit, 2 sets of parks. There we go. I'm going to go with the other one. I think it's got a better legend. There we go. Okay. Same deal. All right. So I got 2 sets of parks. We've got high priority parks on both ends of the spectrum. Okay. These parks represent parks that kids hang out at, they walk to and from, but they also kind of feel unsafe. They try to avoid the routes to and from those parks if possible. So these are parks that represent moments of conflict in the lives of kids. There's a lot of friction around these parks. They want to be there. They don't love it, but they want to be there. Okay, there may be their neighborhood parks. There may be a park that's just gone in decline over the years. Who knows why? But that's the situation. So what I've done here is we have high priority parks that are equity aligned. What we've done is taken our AMP youth score, so our priority score, which is a function of all of those data you're looking at. Where are the kids? Well, we know where they're at. Where are they feeling unsafe? We know that too. Routes are they using? We know that. Routes are they avoiding? We know that. We can assemble what's essentially an index, and that was that heat map that you saw. That's an index of where we ought to be investing. When I take that index and mash it up with the equity index and mash it up with, say, parks, this is what we get. So we've got now every single park labeled, and let's say that we are going to choose a park in a particular district. Let's say we're choosing a park in the central district. So I'm going to do a little GIS. I'm going to select by location. Hold on. So this is we've got to choose a park in the central district. Which of those parks should we choose? So we're going to choose from these park sites using, oh God, I've got GIS students in here who are watching me, but it's actually, what I want to show you is how easy it is to do this. So I've got Central District selected. This is Hilltop, right? I want to know which parks are in Central District. You've got a GIS team, or hey, you've got Matt. You say, hey, Matt, we need to run a quick analysis. Which park should we invest in Hilltop? I'll tell you. Okay, so we're going to select all the parks that intersect with Hilltop Council District. Is this set up right, Cameron? Ah, there it is. Okay, so I've selected my parks, right? Now I'm going to check out those parks. Ah, there they are. There's 20 parks. Does anybody know that? 20 parks, Hilltop. There's the selected parks. We'll scroll over here to my easy score. Okay, so walkability. Equity-aligned walkability. Here's our, looks like we have a tie. Our top 2 parks, if we're going to invest in Hilltop, would be Peoples or Neighbors, right? So these are the parks where kids are experiencing the most friction. These are the parks where if you really need validation, you need to tell someone, yeah, we're investing here because the kids told us to. There it is. There it is, okay? All the parks ranked. Same data have been attached to block groups. Same data have been attached to street lines. So maybe we're not looking for parks, but we're looking for streets. All of those data exist. I just jumped over here to a different map, and we can just look at real quickly what a walkability map of Tacoma roads looks like. There it is. So this is where kids are telling us that when they're out walking, they are struggling. And what those colors represent are line segments. So if you work with GIS data, if you work with roads data, you understand roads. Think of these as blocks. So every block in the city of Tacoma has now been aligned. The equity index and our youth data index are aligned to create a single value. And those values are attached to all of these objects. Aligning our data with any of your data, very doable. Your sites, your polygons, whatever it is, we can attach those and then create our field notes or share data back with you. I do have a baggie of data, for real. I've got thumb drives here, right? Why not? Yeah, so the data are not online because I haven't put them online, and also there's some things I need to do to them, but this is, on the thumb drive, you've got in here our technical notes. You've got in here the data sheet that's back there that kind of gives a summary of what the data are. And then you also have this file. So this is a project file in ArcPro. What you've got in here are our park sites visualized using our walkability data, as well as our livability data, and then roads for walkability, livability, and block groups for walkability, livability. It's as easy as opening up these data and going in and saying, okay, what's my score? There it is. I've got my named priorities for every block group, for every line segment, for every park, for whatever you have, honestly. And talk to me afterwards. I'll align your data with our data. And then you have your scores. And the scores are a range of values, right? So that means you can rank very easily if you have 10 sites and you need to rank them like that, okay? So we're doing all that engagement work. You heard from our engagement team. We're taking what the kids are telling us and putting them into formats that you all use. And if it's a format that you use that I'm not sharing with you, let me know. And we can absolutely align our data with those formats. Where we're at with the project is that we've done a ton of work. We're in year 2 of data collection. We should talk to another 10,000 kids this year, have another probably 6, 7, 8,000 responses. I'm hoping we expand, maybe grow into Bethel, maybe grow into Peninsula, and we start generating these data in a big way for our region. They're very easily activated at this point. But I think that the challenge is we'll have to work together a little bit so that I understand your systems, you understand the data, so that we can bring them into conversation. I would talk to your partners at other agencies. Let them know, hey, the data are there for Tacoma, for down through the I-5 corridor. Just by virtue of the fact that Franklin Pierce has been so on board, we have data all the way down into Spanaway. Solid patterns for unincorporated Pierce County down along I-5 in the most marginalized part of the region. So if you're working in those areas, I know Health Department is and Pierce Parks is, I'm happy to share. I've got a few of these if you want one. What I'd like to do, we have about 15, 20 minutes left. I'd love to open up for questions for myself, for the engagement team, and then just remind you that I am going to go over and have a beer at 7C's at 4:30 when we're done, because it's been a sprint to get here. If you want data, grab data from me. But now I'd love to open up for questions, especially, our engagement team is standing around. So, yes. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so if there's questions. Yeah, Leah.
Thanks for sharing this. Hi, everyone. My name is Leah Ford. I work at Tacoma Pierce County Health Department. I love all of this, and I have so many things turning in my brain. But I was curious. Lisa had mentioned, the safer routes and not going to school because they don't feel safe. And obviously, you showed us a variety of instances regarding safety. I'm just curious, how are you communicating what safety actually means? And are you seeing any variations in that just based on cultural nuances?
So I can tell you from the data perspective what we're seeing, and then it would be interesting, I think, for you to hear from maybe the folks on the ground. Sorry. In the data, we can segment. So there's a couple of questions in here that ask specifically, what would you change? What do you love about your neighborhood? And then every time somebody draws something, they're leaving short text responses. When we look at those, the patterns that I think you'd expect to see, that safety means something different to kids living in Ruston than it is to kids living in around Mount T, right? And I mean, we could model that. We could talk about it right now. It's kind of depressing, but the patterns are there, and it's very easy for me to pull them out. So if you have a site, if you're working in a community of focus and you want to characterize that community, given the psychographic, the attitudinal data we have from kids, totally doable. I just need your polygon, and then I can do a lot. Yeah, it's really powerful data. It's a good question. I think it'd be useful maybe to hear from the team on the ground.
I completely agree with that, that it's different student to student. When we're in the classroom, we're giving them these questions that kind of get their brains moving before they even take the survey. And so you get a lot of different responses from a lot of different kids. The students that I've seen that live by Ruston, they are afraid of cars because it's such a busy area, and there's cars speeding up and down those big hills that you can't really see over. And then there's kids that do get a chance to walk around, and they feel unsafe because the sidewalk completely disappears when they're on their way to school, and there's no lights, so they're afraid they're going to get hit by a car. It really depends on the students, on where they live, and how they actually communicate with their communities in general. You guys have anything?
Right, and so talking about different areas, I spent some time in the Parkland area, and kids are scared to walk. They're scared of who might be following them. They're scared of being shot. So it varies quite a bit. And I think we talk to them about that, right? When they open up about it, they find out they're not alone. And that's where we get the data. That's where we get to see, there is an intense feeling going on in that area, and creating that story so that we can create some change.
I think it's really just what my two fellows said. It really depends on the community they're in. And then I receive a lot of kids just saying the stoplights about, especially in, not a stoplights, I think it's the stop sign in their neighborhood. They're afraid they're going to get hit in their neighborhood, which that's scary. I think home is something they should treat as a safety environment, but now they're kind of mentioning it. My neighbor's house, I think last week I have a student saying his neighbor's house got hit by 3 times by a car, and then finally they did a roundabout, or finally they did something that keep that house safe. But he was wondering why it has to be 3 times. Why should not be 0 times? why should this happen until people realize? And I think it's just kids wants to make sure some area they're in is safe for them to, grow up, and that's how they don't really have anything to prepare them if they see some emergencies. It's just they haven't really developed that kind of perspective yet. So it's kind of when they meet emergency, they will freak out, and the panicking will make them what I'm going to do. Especially like homelessness, and also right now the gun, it put them in like a stress about what I'm going to do, what should I do, and if I can help, what I can help, just like that.
Yeah, and I think what's important to know is that those patterns, there's contours of like fear and safety and feeling uncomfortable, and the meaning is different, right? So there's a geography to that you can't capture unless you're capturing the geography, and that's really what we're doing with this. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah, Sean.
Sean Phelps, I work with Pierce County in the roads department and the area, including Franklin Pierce, where there are not a lot of sidewalks. And that's not my question, though. I noticed your demographic drop downs have for age, many age groups, and I can understand why you're focusing on schools. But I'm wondering, are you going to open it up at some point, do you think, to more of the general population, older people?
Yeah, it's a good question. So this particular survey, anybody could participate, and then we can filter by age. I've got all of those age categories because we have adults on occasion participating. A teacher will participate, a teacher's aide will participate. What we have here, though, if it's not clear, this is the Action Mapping Project, right? This is the survey that we've done in our data. Rolling out another survey, say for Parkland and active transportation, that has specific questions for a specific area, is very doable. So there's multiple ways to engage with what we've built. We have our data, but we also have tools that can generate these sort of data for other areas or for other projects. A few years ago, I worked with South End Neighborhood Council with a real early beta of this, and adults were participating. And I think some of the age categories are holdovers from that too. Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, thanks, Matt. Adele Pierce from Active Transportation at WashDOT. I love everything about this. I'm really excited to maybe get my hands on some of that data and share with our GIS person. I am really curious about what next, right? I think this is phenomenal. And I think the point raised about kids often, and young people, I should say, often feel like, well, you're asking us this, and then what are we going to do about it? Like, why should I bother engaging with you? Like, where's the change going to happen? So that's one piece, is kind of, how is my voice really going to influence change? Like, what are you going to do with this data, and where are you going to take it? And then the other piece, I guess, is about empowering those youth. Like you said, right, 10% of them really want to be the change makers. Like, are there vehicles, or maybe that's the wrong choice of words, but are there mechanisms for those children and youth to then go and speak to policymakers, advocate at the legislative level for funding, right? Because we can say, yeah, we need more sidewalks here, but until there's the money and the will and all these other bureaucratic pieces, like that, there's more to make change happen than just the data, I guess. So I was curious about those two pieces.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. I mean, it is a good question. Okay, so what you see here this year is, and you have a response to that? Okay, good.
Good man. Yeah, I think it's an excellent question, and it's the direction that the research fellow team is heading in. We'd like to, we're meeting with the Tacoma Youth Council and the Metro Parks Youth Council, and what we'd like to do is figure out how to teach them to use the data to leverage for their own goals, so that we are just a mechanism to get these data into people's hands, and they're used for whatever purposes they see fit. And so that's our goal. We also would like to build our own youth council and really teach them how to do this. Our vision is to actually, not that I don't love my team here, but teach high schoolers actually to collect this data themselves at their own schools, develop the leadership network in those schools. It's amazing public speaking skills to go into a middle school and high school and try to control a conversation. And so I think that there's a lot to be gained here from actually putting as much of this back into the hands of our youth because I think it's more powerful coming from them. I think they'll learn excellent skills. Matt and I have talked about a program where they learn a little bit of GIS so they actually can manipulate the data to their own ends. So I think you're onto something, and that's where we'd like to head. Going forward, we're always trying to, raise a little bit of extra money to kind of get some of these things off the ground. So, but I think that's really where we're headed in terms of not being the clearinghouse for it as much as giving the opportunities to other folks to do it for themselves.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
I actually have a strong response to this.
Lisa?
I work
Hold on, it's being recorded, so yeah, there you go.
Gosh, no. Okay, so I can't. So I work for Metro Parks and I do our long-range strategic planning. I worked for the city of Tacoma for 15 years in government relations. I started my career in doing community engagement work back in 1991 when nobody even knew what that meant. So what I would love to talk with you more about is getting you in front of the other audiences of engaged community, the neighborhood councils, the advisory councils. The city of Tacoma does the participatory budgeting. Yes, the youth advisory councils. And we do want the youth to be able to advocate directly for themselves. We also can build momentum with these other groups who already do have a platform oftentimes with the policymakers. And so working together so that policymakers don't have all these groups of community engagement people and this data then working against each other in front of the policymaker. How do we mobilize the two groups together? So I'd love to help the young people bring their experiences presented in this way to a lot of those groups that are already mobilized and have the ear of policymakers.
That's it. That's it. I mean, that's where we're at, right? I mean, it's super exciting to hear because for years I've been just collecting data, making data, right? We've been a clearinghouse, like Natalie says, but I think now we have enough data, and the data are easy to use. They even have an acronym: Equity Aligned Spatial Youth Data. Grab a thing from me. But right now we are at the moment where AMP, I think, is not going to wait and keep giving data. I think we're just going to take the, what is it, the horse by the reins or something? Some horse metaphor. So there's a webinar schedule. I'm going to be doing monthly webinars starting in January, talking about how to activate our data both technically and in your own policy. And those are already scheduled and themed out, though I may change the theme slightly. We're going to be taking the lead, I think, from here, and you are our partners. I mean, if you took the time to show up today, you're the people that we should be talking to. We have a community of practice here. So many of the faces in here are familiar. Actually, all your faces are familiar. So, the mailing list, the mailing list that we have is going to become a community of practice. I have visions for a technical community and a policy-oriented community. The thing about it is, there's a lot of us wanting to do the same thing, and I haven't found the vehicle, the right group to go through, so we're just gonna start doing it. And I'd love to see y'all keep coming. If you have data that you wanna talk to me about, can we align our systems so that you can begin using these data, responding to kids? That's what we're here for today. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're walking away with anything, it's that, okay, AMP finally has data that we can use. It's for the city of Tacoma. I could make the same data for, I think, most of Pierce County. I need to align it with the Pierce County Equity Index. But we can take data all the way down through Parkland into Spanaway. Just work with me on it, and we'll figure out how to build these systems this year. And hopefully next year, we're talking about successes. And success doesn't mean we made a crosswalk. Success means now the epidemiologists at the health department are using equity-aligned youth data. That's cool. That would just make my day, right? That Sean in the Vision Zero group is engaging with what the youth are telling us. I mean, that's kind of where we need to tell stories to the kids next year that, and I don't mean stories like we're making them up, I mean actual tales of us listening to them and either responding directly or at least integrating their ideas and their voice into our systems. It's there, it's possible, we made it. We'll have a lot more data coming. So keep talking to me. Look at that, we have about time for maybe one more question. Does anybody have one more question? Alexander would like to add something.
Just going back to that point and going back a little bit to what you said, I think one of the things the students really want, because we're running into a lot of students that are taking this for the second year in a row, and it's transparency, right? We talk about this data. I'm not a big data person. I see the red lines. I'm like, that looks cool, but I have no idea what's going on. I'm more of a people person, and these kids, they want to know what's going on. We talk about, the Youth Advisory Council and getting all these neighborhoods and everything. But at the end of the day, they really just want to, at the very least, know what's going on. They want to be involved more than we think they did. I know when I went into the classrooms, there's some students, you see them and you're like, you're not gonna take the survey, you're kind of just sitting in the back. And then all of a sudden something clicks and they're like, oh, I deal with that. And then they're sitting in the back hiding and doing the survey because they want to keep looking cool in front of their friends, right? So I know that as a challenge for me, taking on the social media and everything, please don't fire me, is making sure that we get it in front of them, right? Get this information, because it can't stop just with us going into the classrooms and presenting this and then we see them again next year. It's talking with you guys with these monthly meetings and gathering all this information, and then I put it out there and be like, hey, we talked to them, we had a symposium this week, and this is what we talked about. These decision makers, they're really interested in how you guys feel about why you hang out at the mall, why you feel unsafe in these areas. So I think that is something that we really need to make sure we're doing for these kids.
I have such an amazing team. I won't fire you all for high schoolers. I take that back. But I do think this is the point that comes up with my team over and over again is, what can we tell them? What can we show the students about what's going on? And so if you see my name in your inbox, it's just me saying, hey, give me a hand here, help me show the kids what we're doing. Unrelated point, but Matt, you brought this up earlier. So if folks in the room have ideas for their own engagement projects, this is a system that they could possibly use for that as well.
Yeah, we definitely, I'm thinking about engagement at the health department or libraries. Honestly, any of y'all, I'm interested to explore, how we can hear other voices, amplify other voices. So we are pushing up against 4:30. So I'm gonna head over, we're gonna clean up and then some of us are gonna head over and grab a beer at 7 C's. You're welcome to join us. Otherwise, I really, truly thank you for all coming today. If you want to work with me to activate Youth Voice, get in touch. There's lots of QR codes all over the place. Just scan something, shoot me an email, and I'll come to your office and we can talk about how to activate your data. Okay, thank you.